Hello, this is Mari Lane on the Buying Space channel. Today I'm doing the Adult Bible Studies, and today's background passage in our lesson is Hebrews 11. And as a former atheist, this chapter really touches my heart because it's about faith. Faith is the cornerstone of believing in God. Karl Marx even said that faith was the difference between belief and disbelief in God. You could argue all day about whether God exists or not, but you have to have faith. And faith is something that's not just boom, it's there. Faith, like love, has to be built and has to be worked on and has to be contemplated. Because without faith, there's no reason to believe. And also, when I looked at this chapter, I was very happy to know that in this chapter is highlighted some of the things that are discussed and celebrated during Rosh Hashanah. It's the Jewish New Year this weekend, and the Sabbat is today from Rosh Hashanah. This is a very special weekend, and actually this chapter recounts the history of why that is celebrated and much, much more. So I'm going to start, I believe, in verse 8. It's Hebrews 11, verse 8. And I also want to say before I get started that Hebrews is one of my favorite books of the Bible because it's God's command that the men make the coffee. He brews. Just saying. Okay, chapter 11, verse 8, all silliness aside. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called up to go out of the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith, Sarah herself also receiving strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful, for who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, was born as many as the stars in the sky, and multitudes innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar, or off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises offered up his only begotten Son, of whom it is said, "And Isaac your seed shall be called," concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he was also received him in a figurative sense. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of his sons of Joseph and worshipped, leaning on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel and gave instructions concerning his bones. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the approach of Christ greater than riches and the treasure in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith he forsake Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, lest he be destroyed, the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, whereas the Egyptian attempted to do so and were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. By faith the harlot Rehoboam did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenching the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. Out of weakness they were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to fight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance. They might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trial of mockings and scornings, yes, and chains and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were tempted and slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskin and goatskins, being destitute after afflicted torment, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained in a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise, God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. This covers the history of what's celebrated in Rosh Hashanah. This talked about Abraham asking to sacrifice Isaac, and God provided a ram that was caught in the brambles to replace Isaac as a sacrifice. But God knew that Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son. But it starts out with Abraham when he was an adult with his wife and his servants and his flocks and his possessions, leaving his home. God told him to leave his home, the Ur of Chaldees, which was a mighty civilization, and go off into the wilderness. What a step of faith. And that's what started it all. Abraham listening to God and following what he wanted him to do by faith. Abraham had no way to know that he was founding a nation. Abraham had no way to know about Moses or Jericho. He had no way to know that he would create this wonderful nation of people, the Jews, who would bless people on earth. He had no way to know that. He heard God's voice and he followed by faith. Wow, if we could do that in our lives. You will have a wonderful and blessed day.